Mimi, get dressed. We are going to Lekki. What is in Lekki? This party is everything. Keep the vibes high.
The sun had barely finished climbing over Lagos when the argument started. Not loud arguments, not yet. The kind that lived in pauses, in glances, in the way someone answered a question a second too late. These were the arguments of four young women who loved each other and were also, quietly, becoming tired of the same life. The apartment in Surulere was small and warm, holding four different versions of survival. Ada's corner was the most ordered. Notebook, calendar, work bag hanging on the door like it was always ready to leave before she was. Tomiwa's side spilled over with clothes, perfume bottles, and a ring light that suggested a life she hadn't quite reached yet. Zainab's space was minimal, as though she never fully unpacked. Mimi's was lively and scattered, full of beauty products and half-finished snacks. It was a Saturday morning. The fan turned lazily. Outside, Lagos had already found its voice. Ada sat on the floor calculating her monthly budget, 60,000 naira. After rent, transport, food, and data, what remained was barely worth writing down. She wrote it down anyway. Ada always wrote things down. Refusing to look at a difficult thing had never once made it smaller. Tomiwa stepped out of the bathroom, phone already live in her hand, and held the screen out toward Ada's face without greeting or preamble. She said Ada needed to see something immediately. Ada told her good morning first. Tomiwa said yes, good morning, but she needed to see this right now. On the screen was Chinyere's Instagram. A rooftop, Lagos Island glittering behind her, champagne, seafood, designer pieces, and a body that spoke of deliberate and expensive change. The caption read, God's favorite, 4,000 likes. Ada asked who it was. Tomiwa said Chinyere, Unilag, same graduation year. 2 years ago, this same girl was sending voice notes about not having transport fare. Now, she was at Echo Hotel on a Thursday night like it cost her nothing. Mimi stirred from her mattress and asked if it was the Chinyere that dated that short economics guy. Tomiwa said the very one. Mimi scrolled through in silence before saying quietly that
she looks completely different.
Tomiwa said that was exactly the point. She went to a clinic in Lekki and now look at everything that followed.
What are we concluding from this? Nobody is saying anything yet. Is the conclusion for us to go for surgery and find rich men? Surgery? That's extreme. What are you reading? I'm serious. It's a shortcut to a better life. You're something else. She's joking, right? We are just talking without doing anything or finding a solution. What do you mean doing anything? Doing what specifically, if I may ask? We need good money for a better life now. How do we get the good money? We work hard and save. It will come. I am not in agreement with any plans you girls are planning. Count me out. What? Why not? Come on, let's talk about it. No, my mind is made up. There is nothing wrong in the plan. Most girls do it and nothing wrong. You sure? I'm sure. Relax.
The room went quiet. The fan kept turning. Outside, the Akara seller made her morning rounds.
I am just tired. I have hustled a lot, but nothing to show for it. I understand.
Same apartment, same number. Ada said she heard her. Tomiwa asked if she actually did, because sometimes it felt like Ada had made peace with this life and she had not. Ada said that didn't make her wrong, it made her human. But unhappiness with where you are, she said, doesn't mean every exit leads somewhere worth going. Then Zainab spoke, casually, the way people say the heaviest things, like they're saying nothing at all. She said she had been talking to someone. 3 heads turned.
His name is Emeka and he is willing to pay for our rent. Emeka? Really? That's amazing. Wow, that's a huge relief. Who is he? We should thank him. How old is he and are you sure he doesn't need anything more?
Ada asked whether Emeka knew the real Zainab, but just the version she put on. Zainab asked if that even mattered at the beginning. Ada said it mattered most at the beginning because the version he was investing in was the version he would expect forever. Mimi asked quietly what they were supposed to do then. Nobody answered. Because the answer was not one thing. It was 4 different choices, quietly forming in 4 different hearts. So they sat in the heat, under the slow fan, each one privately deciding how much she was willing to give and what she was willing to become. Outside, Lagos didn't wait. The week after that Saturday morning, something shifted in the apartment. Not dramatically, just enough to be felt. The way a room changes when someone has already made up their mind, even before they say it out loud. Tomiwa had been doing her research for weeks, quietly, privately, the way she approached anything that mattered. She saved clinic pages, studied before and after photos, read testimonials with the focus of someone preparing for an exam. She had a number in mind, a plan. All she needed was someone to go with her. She chose Mimi. Not Ada, who would ask the kind of questions that stayed with you long after they were asked. Not Zainab, who carried her doubt too openly. Mimi was easier, warm, excitable, the kind of person who could turn a waiting room into the beginning of something beautiful. On Tuesday morning, Tomiwa knocked on the bathroom door.
Mimi, get
Get
dressed. We're going to Lekki.
We're going to Lekki.
Lekki.
Mimi asked
What
what
is
was
in
in
Lekki?
Lekki. Tomiwa told her she would explain in the car. Mimi asked what car. Tomiwa said the ride was already outside. Mimi was dressed in 7 minutes. The clinic was exactly what its Instagram page had promised. White walls, cool air conditioning that felt like relief after the Lagos heat, framed before and after photographs lining the corridor like a gallery of transformation. Everything about this space was designed to reassure, to soften hesitation, to make the decision feel not just acceptable, but obvious. The doctor was younger than expected, well-spoken, calm. He carried the quiet confidence of someone who had repeated the same conversation so many times, it no longer required effort. He explained everything with smooth clarity. Results, recovery, process, arranging the words in a way that made it all sound not just possible, but sensible.
Trust me, when we are done, you would appreciate your body more.
Mimi asked about pain. He called it discomfort. Temporary. Manageable. Tomiwa asked about recovery time. 2 to 4 weeks. Mimi studied the photos, searching for something real beneath the perfection. The doctor smiled. Everything, he assured them, was real. By the time they left, Tomiwa had signed the intake forms. Her procedure was scheduled for the following month, and Mimi, who had come only for company, had booked her own consultation. Her excitement bright and immediate, like someone finally giving themselves permission to want what they had been pretending not to want.
Wow,
On the
look at
ride
this place,
home,
so colorful.
Mimi
It
talked
is.
the
Everyone looks so
entire
busy.
way.
I know. Oh, and that market
Ideas,
over there. It's
plans,
wonderful. I could spend all
possibilities,
day here.
her voice
Me too.
filling the
This is the
car with
best.
energy. Tomiwa responded when necessary, smiling in the right places. But most of the time, she watched Lagos move past the window, quieter than her decision suggested. That evening, neither of them mentioned the clinic to Ada. While Tomiwa and Mimi were in Lekki, Zainab sat across from Emeka for the first time in a restaurant on Lagos Island. He was exactly as she had imagined. Well-dressed without trying too hard, soft-spoken without weakness, carrying the kind of presence that came from long familiarity with money, the kind that did not need to announce itself.
This
He
place is
ordered for
beautiful.
both of
Thank you
them.
for bringing me here.
And somehow,
I wanted our
it was
evening to be special.
exactly what she
It
would
is.
have chosen.
But we need to talk about
He
our
asked her
future.
what she wanted
I
from
agree.
life.
What's on your mind?
Not from him, but from life. Zainab said
Stability.
stability.
You're right.
He said
This place
stability
is
was
beautiful. Thank you for
underrated.
bringing me here.
She told him most people her age were chasing excitement
is.
and she was
But we
tired
need
of
to talk about our
pretending she wanted the
I
same.
agree. What's on
He
your
studied
mind?
her for a moment, then told her she was more self-aware than most people he
feel
met.
so
She asked
at
if that was a
peace.
compliment. He said it was an observation.
Stability.
She laughed. A real one. That night, back in the apartment, Zainab sat on her mattress turning her phone over in her hands, a quiet warmth settling in her chest. Something new, something she recognized, and something she did not entirely trust. Across the room, Ada looked up from her desk and studied her face the way she always did, carefully, without intrusion. She
How
asked
was
how
your
the evening
evening?
was.
It was
Zainab
good.
said
I went
it
out
was
with friends.
fine. She paused, then asked if she meant fine or actually fine.
How was your
Zainab
evening?
smiled despite
It was
herself.
good. I went
She
out with
said,
friends.
actually
Oh, where did
fine.
you go?
Ada
Just a
held
little
her
cafe
gaze for a
downtown.
moment,
It was fun.
then nodded
Nice.
and returned to her work. She didn't push, but she paid attention, because quiet decisions always, eventually, reveal themselves. Tomiwa returned from her procedure 6 weeks later, and the apartment received her differently. She stood in the doorway in a fitted outfit.
Babe, you look different. What happened? Don't worry, babe. Just admire what you see.
Mimi screamed, an actual full scream that sent the neighbor's dog into a frenzy 2 compounds away. Even Zainab, who rarely performed surprise, sat up slowly and took a long look. Ada smiled, a real smile.
But babe, seriously, what is going on? Give us the gist.
Mimi circled her like a photographer at a shoot, asking who did her hair, where she got the outfit, how she was feeling. Tomiwa laughed and said she was feeling like herself, finally. Ada asked quietly if she was okay. Tomiwa told her she was better than okay. Ada said that wasn't what she asked. Tomiwa held her gaze for a moment before saying she was fine, Ada, genuinely fine. Ada nodded and said nothing more. But she noticed the way Tomiwa lowered herself carefully onto the mattress, and the small wins she covered quickly with a smile. The likes came in fast. The DMs followed. Invitations arrived from people who had never noticed her before. Events, dinners, gatherings on Lagos Island where the air smelled like money and everyone was performing for everyone else. Tomiwa moved through all of it with the confidence of someone who had paid for her seat at the table and intended to get full value. Zainab was already comfortable in that world by now. Emeka had been consistent. Dinners, weekend trips, a new phone she mentioned casually as though it had simply appeared. She was careful never to seem too grateful. Because she understood instinctively that gratitude gave men like Emeka a particular kind of power. So she received everything with a quiet elegance that made him want to give more. Mimi recovered from her own procedure and immediately began building her new image online. The photos went up carefully. Angles chosen, lighting controlled, captions crafted. The response was everything she had hoped for. Strangers were commenting, followers were climbing, and for the first time in a long time, she woke up excited to look at her phone. The 3 of them moved through Lagos that season like they had finally been granted access to a room they had been standing outside for years. Ada watched from a careful distance. She still went to work every morning, still packed her lunch, still wrote in her notebook every evening. She was happy for her friends, genuinely, not performatively. But she also noticed the things the Instagram posts didn't show. She noticed Tomiwa taking painkillers she didn't mention. She noticed Zainab laughing a little too hard at things that weren't funny. The way people laugh when they are managing something privately. She noticed Mimi wincing when she sat down and waving it off as nothing. She noticed all of it and said nothing. Because these were grown women making their own choices, and Ada understood the difference between concern and control. But she kept her notebook close. She kept building the quiet thing nobody was paying attention to yet. And she kept her eyes open. Because in Lagos, the season always changes. The only question is whether you are ready when it does. The cracks did not arrive all at once. They appeared the way they always do. Slowly, in private, in the small moments between the performances. Tomiwa had been ignoring her body for weeks. The pain that began as a dull ache in her lower back had quietly become something sharper, more insistent, the kind that woke her at odd hours and refused to be reasoned with. She took painkillers the way some people took vitamins, routinely, without thought, hoping the problem would eventually lose interest and leave. She had not returned to the clinic for her follow-up appointment. She told herself she would go next week. Next week kept moving forward without her. One evening, Ada found the pill bottle beside her mattress and picked it up. She asked Tomiwa how long she had been taking these. Tomiwa said it was just for the discomfort. It was normal. The doctor had said some discomfort was normal. Ada asked when she had last spoken to the doctor. Tomiwa said she had been busy. Ada set the bottle down carefully and told her she needed to go back. Tomiwa said she would. Ada told her she meant this week, not eventually. Tomiwa said, okay, Ada, okay. She did not go that week. Mimi's situation was quieter but no less serious. A low fever she attributed to stress, a swelling that she photographed from careful angles that made it invisible online. She had built an entire public image around her transformation, and the thought of admitting that something might be wrong felt like dismantling everything she had just constructed. So she managed it privately, the way young women are so often taught to manage inconvenient things, silently and with a smile ready for whenever anyone looked her way. Zainab's cracks were not physical. They were the kind that appeared in behavior, in the small recalibrations a person makes when they are slowly adjusting themselves to fit someone else's expectations. Emeka had begun to change, not dramatically, not in ways that were easy to name. The warmth was still there, but it had become conditional, a temperature he controlled. He called at odd hours and noted, without raising his voice, when she took too long to answer. He made small remarks about her friends, nothing direct, just observations, dropped casually into conversation like seeds he was planting and waiting on. One night, he told her that the girls she
Those
spent
girls are
time
no
with were
longer
not
on
at
your
her
level.
level anymore. Zainab asked what he meant. He said she was moving in different circles now, and her association should reflect that. She told him her friends were important to her. He was quiet for a moment before saying, of course, he understood completely, and then he changed the subject so smoothly she almost didn't notice that the seed had already been planted. She came home that night and sat in the bathroom for a long time. Ada was still awake when she came out. She didn't ask what was wrong. She simply moved her notebook and made space beside her and waited. Zainab sat down and said Emeka thought she was outgrowing her friendships. Ada asked what she thought. Zainab said she didn't know anymore. Ada told her that not knowing was fine, but the moment someone else's opinion of her life became louder than her own, that was the moment to pay close attention. Zainab was quiet for a long time before she said she heard her. Ada said good. Outside, Lagos continued without pause or sympathy, because the city had seen this story before. There's a moment in every story like this one where the thing everyone privately feared stops being a fear and becomes a fact. That moment arrived on a Friday night in Lagos Island, surrounded by music and champagne and people who were too busy performing their own happiness to notice that someone nearby was in trouble. The event was the kind that looked beautiful from the outside.
really is.
A rooftop
I'm so glad we
gathering,
came.
fairy lights strung
great
between
night.
pillars,
Cheers to
a
that.
DJ playing music at exactly the right volume, tables dressed with bottles that cost more than a month's rent in Surulere. Tomiwa had gotten them on the list through someone she had
Tamika
met
and
at a
Cheryl
previous
were on the
outing.
list.
They arrived dressed and
This place
confident,
is
moving
amazing.
through the
It's the
crowd with
best
the
view in the
ease of
city.
people
Let's
who
go
belonged.
dance.
Mimi had not been feeling well for 3 days. She knew it. She had taken something for the fever that morning and told herself the swelling was just the body still settling. She had posted a photo
you
2
look
hours before the
amazing.
event, angles
Body
perfect,
goals.
caption
She's that
confident,
girl.
and the comments had been so warm and affirming that it felt almost like medicine. So she got dressed. She did her makeup carefully. She went. On the way there, Tomiwa asked if she was
Are
okay.
you okay?
Mimi said she was fine, just
I
a
am
little
fine.
tired. Tomiwa said she didn't have to come if she wasn't feeling well. Mimi told her she was fine, Tomiwa, she was fine. For the first hour, she managed well enough. She laughed in the right places, took photos, held her glass without drinking much. But the heat of the rooftop was unforgiving, and her body had been carrying something it was no longer willing to carry quietly. It happened without warning. One moment she was standing beside Tomiwa mid-conversation, and the next she was on the ground, and the music was still playing, and it took several long seconds for anyone to understand what had just happened. Tomiwa's scream cut through everything. She dropped beside Mimi and called her name, shaking her shoulder, asking her to open her eyes. Someone in the crowd shouted to call an ambulance. Someone else said, give her air, give her space. Tomiwa kept saying her name, Mimi, Mimi, look at me, her voice climbing with each repetition. The ambulance took 20 minutes. They were the longest 20 minutes Tomiwa had ever sat through. Ada got the call when she was at her desk. She arrived at the hospital still in her work clothes, notebook tucked under her arm out of pure habit, and found Tomiwa in the waiting room sitting rigidly in a plastic chair, still dressed for the event, mascara tracking silently down her face. Ada sat
My dear,
beside
what
her
happened?
and took her
Talk
hand.
to me.
Tomiwa
It's so
said
hard,
she
I'm
should have
scared.
made her stay home.
I know.
Ada
but you
said
are
she couldn't have
strong.
made
We
Mimi
will
do
face it
anything.
together.
Tomiwa
I
said she
needed to
took
hear
her to that
that.
clinic.
I
She
needed to
sat
hear
there with
that.
her and made it feel exciting and safe, and she had no business doing that. Ada told her she couldn't have known. Tomiwa said she should have asked more questions. She should have slowed down. Zainab arrived 30 minutes later, still in her coat. breathless, some rushing. The doctor came out eventually and told them it was a post-surgical complication, an infection that had been developing for longer than anyone realized. He said they had caught it in time. He said she was stable. She was lucky. Tomiwa stared at the floor when he said the word lucky, because luck felt like the wrong word entirely for a situation that had been building quietly for weeks while everyone looked away, including herself. The three of them sat in that waiting room until past midnight. The fluorescent light above them hummed without pause, and outside the hospital, Lagos continued exactly as it always did. Loud, indifferent, unbothered. It was Ada who finally spoke, quietly, to no one in particular. Some prices announce themselves early. Others wait until you are somewhere you cannot leave before they present the bill. Nobody responded, but nobody disagreed either.
There is a particular kind of silence that follows a crisis. Not peaceful silence, the other kind. The kind that sits heavily in a room and forces everyone in it to look at things they have been carefully avoiding. That silence moved into the apartment after Mimi came home from the hospital. She recovered slowly, propped against pillows, quieter than anyone had ever seen her. The beauty products on her side of the room gathered dust. The phone that had never left her hand now sat face down for hours at a time. She had lost something in that hospital. Not just her health, but the particular confidence that had carried her through the last few months. The version of herself she had been building so carefully online felt very far away from the person lying on that mattress. One afternoon, Ada brought her food and sat beside her. Mimi stared at the ceiling for a long moment before saying she didn't even really want it, the procedure. Not deeply. She had wanted what she thought would come with it. Ada asked what she thought would come with it. Mimi said confidence, belonging, the feeling that she was finally enough. Ada was quiet before she said,
Those things will not come from the outside.
Mimi said she knew that now. Ada told her she had always known it. She had just hoped she was wrong. Mimi didn't argue because it was true. Tomiwa's reckoning was a different kind. She had returned to the clinic finally, not for Mimi's reasons, but for her own body, which had stopped asking politely and was now demanding attention. The doctor was professional and careful, but his concern was visible. He told her the complication was manageable, but that she had waited far longer than she should have. He asked why she hadn't come back sooner. She didn't have a good answer for that. Sitting in the consultation room alone this time, without Mimi's excitement filling the space beside her, the clinic felt different. The framed before and after photos on the wall looked different too. Less like a gallery of possibilities and more like a gallery of decisions, each one made by a real person who had sat in this same chair. She came home and sat on her mattress and did something she hadn't done in months. She opened her calculator and counted what everything had actually cost her. The procedure, the clothes, the events, the maintenance of the image. The number was sobering. And that was before counting the things that didn't have numbers. The pain she had ignored, the follow-up she had skipped, the friendship she had pulled Mimi into without stopping to ask enough questions. She sat with all of it quietly that evening. No ring light, no phone, just herself and the accounting. It was Zainab's reckoning that was the hardest to watch. She ended things with Emeka on a Wednesday evening. Not dramatically, there was no shouting, no confrontation, no moment of explosive clarity. Just a phone call. Her voice steady, saying she was stepping back. He was quiet for a moment before he said he was sorry to hear that and wished her well. The call lasted 4 minutes. She sat very still afterward, phone in her lap, staring at nothing. Ada came and sat beside her without being asked. After a long silence, Zainab said she missed who she was before she started adjusting herself to fit his expectations. Ada asked when she had noticed she was doing it. Zainab said early. She had noticed early and kept going anyway because the comfort was real, even if the cost was too. Ada said that was the most honest thing she had said in months. Zainab laughed quietly and said it didn't feel good to say. Ada told her honesty rarely felt good immediately. That came later. Zainab leaned her head on Ada's shoulder. Inside the apartment, 4 young women were finally, fully sitting with the truth of their choices. And that, painful as it was its own kind of beginning. They were back where it all started. Same apartment, same fan turning slowly overhead, same Lagos humming outside the window. But the women sitting in that room were not the same ones who had argued on that Saturday morning months ago. Something in each of them had shifted, quietly, painfully, and permanently. Mimi was healing. Tomiwa was facing her consequences with open eyes. Zainab had found her way back to herself. And Ada had kept building through all of it, quietly, patiently, on a foundation that belonged entirely to her. Over a simple dinner of jollof rice and fried plantain, Ada told them her small digital business had landed its first real paying client. Not life-changing money, but hers, completely, unshakably hers. Tomiwa said she was proud of her and meant it. Zainab said Ada had been building while the rest of us were performing, and she wanted her to know she had always seen it. Ada said she wasn't trying to prove anything. She was just terrified of building something that could be taken from her. So she built something that couldn't. Nobody said anything after that, because everything had already been said. The price of the soft life is not always paid in money. Sometimes it is paid in your health, your peace, your sense of self. The version of you that existed before the world convinced you she wasn't enough. And the most dangerous thing about that kind of payment is that by the time you feel the cost, you have already been charged. But the most powerful thing a young woman can do in a city that profits from her hunger is decide, quietly, firmly, without performance, that she was always enough. Ada knew that from the beginning. The others simply had to learn it the hard way.